When you're having a conversation or in a meeting, what do you listen to? Does your attention zoom in and zoom out like a camera? Maybe brought into focus by certain words or phrases. Are you an active listener or a passive listener? What do you think other people listen to when you're talking? Can you tell if your audience is being active or passive? Being a good listener is often cited as one of the qualities of a good leader, but it's also one of the qualities of a good company and a well-defined brand. Listening is really about respect, and because of that, it has a powerful effect on whether someone feels valued, and that has an effect on their motivation and opinion, which as marketers, we spend a lot of time trying to sway. Take a look at your Google or Facebook reviews, or look at your competitors, and see for yourself how many times phrases like, "they really listened," or "she took the time to listen to my problem" occurs. We brought this up before, and I'm going to say it again. Your brand isn't what you say about your law firm, it's what other people, your clients, referral partners, neighboring businesses in the community, even your coworkers and employees, it's what they say about your firm. And that's what we're talking about today on Lawsome: leadership, listening, law firm culture, and how it relates to marketing. Ready? Let's go.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by Consultwebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that can be made into a paste and rubbed in to remove the most stubborn stains. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in personal and professional developments. I'm Jake Sanders, and the left side of my head is tingling. That's how I know it's working. And with me is Paul Julius, the king of clean. Paul, why are 4 out of 5 dentists saying that this is the podcast for their teeth?
Oh, I think it has something to do with the stain removal.
It's clear. And we have plaques proving that we have a podcast.
Yeah.
We're
We've
gingival.
been certified by the American Dental Association.
Yeah, they were like, "Who gave you the address to this office?" Remember when we went there? We were like,
Some people call it a restraining order. We like to call it a certificate.
"Oh,
On the show today, we talk about law firm culture and then interview CMO, published author, and legal marketing superstar, Deborah Farone, to find out how the most successful law firm leaders are creating and developing firm cultures to encourage business development. And then we spring the inescapable trap on our guest, known as 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The Hot Take Buffet today is brought to you by James Goodnow, who's writing in Above the Law. His blog is called The Culture Card in Law Firms. Paul, you got this. Let's do a little intro. Tell us what's going on here.
The summary here, James writes, invoking a law firm's culture to shut down experimentation and new ideas doesn't just preserve the existing culture, whatever that might be. It inculcates a deeper culture into the firm, one of fear, stasis, and decay. You can't have a firm culture if your firm doesn't survive. Everything about the world of legal business is up for grabs in the coming years. Resistance to change is no longer just stodgy. It's swiftly becoming an existential threat. So,
wow.
That's at the end of this article. There's a lot in here about the environment. I think of your law firm might be a something somewhat interchangeable with culture, but we have brought this up before about people trying about lawyers, maybe junior partners or something, trying to bring something new or fresh to their writing and getting shot down.
Oh,
or
right,
criticized.
yeah.
That's what we're looking at as far as culture. Cultures, there's tradition. There's, behaviors and social groups and stuff like that. And this thing says, people want to participate in something bigger than themselves, and culture can provide that. Firms with positive, supportive cultures generally take pains to achieve them and don't want to give them up without a fight. Culture matters. And it goes on to talk about the online shoe company Zappos. and how they had a change in the way that they did business. And without getting too far into it, they basically removed the centralized structure of management and leadership, and was like, all right, you're all free to do what you want.
Holacracy is what it says here.
Yeah, that was weird. That's another word I'd
Oh yeah, no, there's inculcating holacracy. We're getting it all today. Yeah, I thought that was interesting, but what some of the takeaways is sort of this pie in the sky mentality. They're like, Zappos saw the impossible, and they just strived for it. And I think for someone running a law firm, they're like, what am I supposed to do with that? And how am I supposed to sell shoes? And then so every email comes with a joke of the day, or I think people have the reference for culture, strategy, all these other ideas at administrative levels of developing business for your law firm. They have tons of advice. But I think what it comes down to, and what we find later with Deborah, is you have to have someone who's willing to take a leadership role and make these dreams possible. Because in some weird way, deciding to be a holacracy wasn't everybody's idea. It was somebody who was addressing a problem that they knew they had, and they needed to bring people in. But in some way, they bureaucratically solved this and created this new, quote unquote, management structure, which, if you probably talk to people at Zappos, it probably doesn't feel like a big difference, but they're just let to do their jobs. But somebody is at the helm, leading, listening, and following up and making real all of these ideas and hopes and dreams and aspirations and advice and Zappos case studies and stuff. Who is going to translate all of this and then bring it to your culture, bring it to your law firm, create it on that scale with people, and then that creates the law firm, and then those are the things that motivate your business. But I think there needs to be the vision here, and it needs to be actually personal. So learning from Zappos is sort of like cool, but you have to. I think there's something about lawyers needing to look inside to figure out how to lead other people. There's something that's just, it feels contrapuntal, sort of contradicting in some weird way. I don't know. Are you vibing with me here? Where am I?
I am. No, I agree with you. And the one thing about Zappos that I think is, I think the way the story is told, and it's good. I mean, this article is good.
This dude's
a
great
writer. The way
writer.
they go through this
Very
stuff.
good.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the Zappos story, I think it's great because in a larger sense, they identify that we have this structure, these management policies, and the way we do things, which contributes to our culture. We need to change that, because they felt that that they said it was more of a top-down organizational charts and job titles became non-existent, which I think is interesting because they identified that the status quo, which was safe, was not a good thing for them because that's how, because it's so competitive, they needed something to give them the edge. But at the same time, someone's still got to do payroll. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just like, I don't know, whatever. Here's a checkbook. Just write yourself.
Yeah, it's open source
money.
Yeah, it's open source. Just go ahead.
So I think that's a little bit different. I mean, selling shoes is a little bit different than running a law firm.
Right.
And they say this in the article. It does say, he straight up says in the one paragraph, I'm not advocating that law firms jump on board with the holacracy movement. The point is that Zappos leadership understood that company culture needs to evolve in a way that propels a business forward, not holds it back.
And I thought this was interesting because this is marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's odd that a personnel decision, HR, PR, internal sort of branding, and mixed with this culture is creating this sort of hybrid sandwich where if you really truly want to be different or distinct in your market, you pay attention to the experience and culture, not only of your clients, but of your staff. And then that starts emanating outwards.
Right.
And a lot of people are wondering if there's something I can do right now to just flip a switch or hit a button. And Deborah talks about it later, is that there is no easy answer. It's distinct and unique for your firm, but it requires a little bit of questioning and then a drive to go through the uncomfortable schisms of deciding to change or hoping or wanting or striving. That comes along because Zappos said, a lot of people bounced, a lot of people left. They weren't happy with it. And then they posted their highest earnings ever. And it's a work in progress. And he's saying, you want to change the way law firms and business models are working today. There's going to be haters aplenty, is what he says.
Yeah.
But he ends it in this way that sums it up. And if you want to change or not, or if you think this is important or it isn't, it doesn't matter, because the clientele, the base, the consumers, the legal market is moving, and they are experiencing Zappos and they are experiencing Amazon. And we've said it before, your competition isn't your next local competitor. It's the legal experience writ large. So if you don't start thinking like that, and this is why he ends, whether culture is a good or bad thing depends on where you find it. In museums and art galleries, culture means intelligence, refinement, and beauty. In a lab, culture means a plate of mold. Culture should be something that drives a law firm to grow, not something that grows over a law firm's corpse. If you think this is important, or if you don't, or if you think it's a marketing decision, or it isn't, or if culture is something you complain about and do nothing and just snark off on Twitter and just, say lawyers are hopeless, you're not going to be the person who's changing this. And you won't be here in the future. So, it's get to the side, because there's people just like James writing eloquently on blogs like Above the Law that are focused on building a community of legal professionals that want to create this culture, that want to see ourselves in the future. And that's where Deborah's coming from. She's got, I thought that she had billions of books. She only has one book, but she just recently published. But the most important part is she's bringing practical advice, and she's here to tell you that it's not easy.
Well, she does. She does have libraries of experience. I mean, she was at two of the biggest firms in the country.
Right.
As CMO. It's, I don't know. You can't really get more valid than that. She's not just making some stuff up.
She's walked it.
Be a game changer or whatever.
Yeah, or make it rain or all those things. And it's fine if you want to do those things.
Well, I think what Deborah says, and this is what the most important thing is, at least to me, and brings this article into line with what Deborah says, is that culture, what happens in your firm, affects how people perceive your firm, because how people do business with you is going to be affected by what the culture at the firm is. And like Jake and I always say, your brand is what people say about you. So if you want to have an effect on that, or you need to make a change on that, which is okay, that's where you need to look. It's not necessarily like, well, you know what? Paint the walls in the lobby and start serving espresso. Like, that's not what we're talking about.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
I met Tanner, who works for Consultwebs, on a plane on the way back from Key West, Florida. And I'd just been thinking that I needed to do some more marketing for my law firm. So when he told me that he worked for Consultwebs, I was super excited. From the beginning till even now, I've been with them for almost 2 years, and the experience has really been great. Having Consultwebs on board is really like having your own team of people that really care about what kind of business you're getting. I mean, practicing law can seem kind of lonely. You always are wondering, how am I going to get clients? How am I going to make payroll? But with Consultwebs, it's not just me worrying about having people come in the door. They're there as well, and they've been so responsive. Since I started with Consultwebs, I have increased the number of employees double at least. And since I started with Consultwebs, the revenue has tripled. So it's really been an incredible experience.
Go to consultwebs.com to learn more.
And now, a Lawsome interview.
As the chief marketing officer at two of the world's most successful law firms, Cravath, Swaine and Moore LLP and Debevoise and Plimpton LLP, and as a national marketing professional at a global management consultancy, Deborah Farone has honed the skills of professional services, marketing, and communications. In addition to her highly regarded work in the communications, counseling, and crisis management spheres, she's established and led marketing efforts for the consulting, advertising, and public relations professions. Ms. Farone was nominated by her peers as the first recipient of the Legal Marketing Association's Legacy Award in recognition of her contribution to the profession. We are so excited to have published author and legal marketing superstar Deborah Farone on the Lawsome Podcast today. How are you, Deborah?
I am doing great. I'm so excited to be with you.
Talking about brand and law firm culture, a lot of people want to get the culture right. They're not sure if that's their brand or what the strategy is. So do you think what happens internally at a law firm, personalities, leadership, does that get reflected externally and defines the brand? Or is a brand what clients say about the firm? Or what's your takes on culture and brand right off?
I think it's what everyone says about the culture. I think the culture really is the brand. And regardless of how good you are at creating a wonderful website or brochures or any of your materials or your social media, it's really what people say and what's out there in the ether that's going to make the difference. So it's a combination of how you treat your clients and what your clients think of you, how you treat your lawyers, and in particular, how you treat your staff. Because you have all these people out there talking, they're going to create a buzz about your firm that's much more powerful than anything someone sees online.
Wow. Well, and I think that we get kind of sidetracked about client experience. We've got the clients and the clients are always right. And it feels like in some way we serve the clients more than our staff. And I think that a management or somebody who's keen on that can stick up for their staff. And that's actually part of the marketing. That's a really great aspect that I don't think a lot of people get. They're like, the client's always right. But sometimes you got to stick up for your staff. That's really, that's a great point. So talking about relating to the staff and making sure they do what they're supposed to be doing, coming up with plans and strategies, it seems like at a lot of legal seminars, there's a lot of lawyers and law firm owners absorbing a lot of the information. And then once they get back into their law firms, it's just like, it's back to their hair on fire. I'm just wondering, in regards to that branding and making sure your staff feel taken care of, what part of marketing strategy do you feel is getting missed? Because a lot of law firms are going to these marketing seminars, but not a lot of them are doing anything about the information that they get. You've written books about this stuff. You keep writing books about this stuff, So,
Right.
How do you think law firms can make like realistic marketing plans and strategies and then execute them with their staff?
Well, I think the leadership is so important in these firms, right? Because not only are the leaders the ones telling folks, what they expect, but they're role models. And so if you see leaders in the firm treating their clients well, treating their staff well, treating their associates well, and their partners well, that's going to send a stronger message than any kind of written mission statement that you have. And good leaders are not easy to find. Just because someone has risen to a senior position in a law firm, it might mean that they're a good manager, but it might also mean that they're not a good leader. And those two skills are very, very different. And I think you need good leadership to have a good culture. But I also think, tying into your other question, because I think there were two questions in there in a way.
Sorry.
No, that's a good question. It's a good way of asking it. I think leadership is very important in marketing because you need to have a plan. You need to have, hopefully, a strategic plan for a law firm at this point. But if not, you need to have practice and department plans. But in order to get those done, a firm needs a strong leader who's going to, be committed to that plan, help sell that plan internally, and make sure that the partners who follow that plan are compensated based on those behaviors that the plan really honors and wants to develop. So I think leadership is very key, both in creating a good culture and a good environment in a firm, but also in the marketing of the firm.
Mm. And
Nice.
so I have one question about leadership and listening. Recently on the show, we've had a lot of people say that they get a lot of advice, but they don't listen to it. How do you help leaders take this advice and make it real? Because you mentioned a difference between managers and leaders. How do you think leaders are actually listening and then taking the information and using it? Is there something about the way they absorb information differently, or?
That's a great question. I think it depends on the personality of the leader, and all of them are so different. I think the ones that have high EQ and have good listening skills are really going to be the ones that do well. It's tough as a CMO to tell your chairman, look, you need to listen to your people,
Mm,
but but there are ways of getting that done. And the firms that do client surveys or that do surveys of their personnel or surveys of their associates, I think are really ahead of the game. I think you want to find out what people are thinking, you want to listen to it, and most importantly, you want to respond.
mm,
So, as a leader, I always feel that the more information that you can gather about those different constituents, the better off you are.
mm,
Um, and today, a law firm has a lot of different constituents. You have clients, and yes, you have people who are working for you, but you have recruiters out there who are talking about you. You have social media, which has its own set of challenges.
mm.
You have recruits and those pre-recruits, those kids that are still in college trying to decide if they're going to go to law school and go into a law firm. So you have all these different audiences to think about as a leader.
Nice. So
Love
to
that.
to follow up on that, and I'm glad you mentioned social media because I wanted to zoom in on that a little bit. Jake and I are very interested in what's happening with social media and Facebook in particular. There's kind of three questions here, and you can choose however you want to do this. But do you think Facebook is still worthwhile for lawyers and law firms? And if it's not Facebook, where should our listeners go to be social? And are there any particular things you've seen more or less successful?
You know, it's a great question because if you asked this to anyone, I think 2 years ago, you probably would have received a different answer than you are getting now.
Mm.
Oh, even 2 months
My
ago.
mind, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. I mean, it's changing so quickly. I guess I should start off maybe by saying which ones I think are the most effective as far as law firms. And part of that means looking at the audiences. So the audience for, let's say, you're trying to reach your clients, probably the most important one is LinkedIn. Most partners these days, or most partners who are trying to develop business, have LinkedIn profiles, but those profiles probably need to be improved a bit. And those are kind of basic things that you just need to have because we know clients are looking at LinkedIn profiles just as much as they're looking at a law firm's profile on their website. So there's certain things that are just so important for clients. But I am finding out that more and more firms are doing things on Facebook that I think is incredible. And the reason is that they know that that's where their audience is. It's not only potential clients, but it's in particular, it's recruits. And there are firms like Norton Rose is doing a great job on Facebook. I think White and Case really has done a wow of a job by putting their chairman, Hugh Verrier on, and Partners in Paris on, and they're doing videos. They're really utilizing the technology, I think, in the way that it was intended.
Mm.
But there are also firms doing some exciting things on Twitter, and it's a great way of reaching not only a younger audience, but if you're trying to reach an audience of, let's say, clients involved in intellectual property, chances are they're using Twitter. They might not be tweeting, but they're certainly listening. So I think it goes back to just good marketing and thinking about where are your audiences and what are they paying attention to and how are you going to reach them, and looking at the range of social media. So, I mean, even Instagram, for recruits, I know that McFarland's in the UK. does a great job with it. And again, I think Norton Rose does an amazing job on Instagram. So again, it just goes back to knowing what your audience is and knowing how you're going to reach them.
Yeah, that's a great point. And another thing about Facebook too is the reviews. You know, there's that's there, and I think it's fantastic that you're saying about recruits, about, you know, professional networking and stuff. People look for validation. So if you have a bunch of, you know, 5-star reviews on Facebook, people we found don't necessarily trust it from just one source. So they're going to go look at LinkedIn. They're going to start looking around. So, you know,
Right.
being present in all these places is good, but making sure you're consistent, I think, is pretty important as well.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. And having a dialogue, you know, being able to respond to questions and being able to respond to comments. And, you know, this is not a one-man band anymore. You can't be in a law firm and just have one person looking at all of your social media. It really needs to be a group effort. And watching the media is, I think, just as important as, you know, conversing with it. So if I were going to go to a law firm today, whether as a recruit or as a client, I would definitely check their Instagram posts, and I would check their Facebook, and I would check, you know, Twitter, and I would look at the whole gamut of things to, you know, do my research.
yeah. Absolutely. And that kind of leads into our next question very well. Your book, Best Practices in Law Firm Business Development and Marketing, you cover a lot of different elements that go into growing a successful law firm. What I want to know is, did you uncover any like fundamentals or core principles that are absolute must-haves in order for a law firm to be successful? And you know, like if they don't have this, it doesn't matter what else they do. It's not going to work. Like, is there anything like that?
Yes, there were definite messages that I got from both the client side and also in-house that I think the firms that are doing really well are the ones who are focused on what they want to be when they grow up. So I guess the best way of putting it is they have a plan, whether it's a written plan or it's a plan that's discussed and executed through the culture. They know that these are the three things that they want to be known for doing really well, and they're focused on it. Or maybe it's 4 or 5 things. I don't think there's a magic number. I loved the firms out there like Wilkinson Walsh in Washington, D.C. I think they have other offices now, but they're focused just on litigation and just on, you know, really significant bet the bank kinds of litigation. Or Gunderson Detmer in Silicon Valley, which focuses on just the venture capital world. And they do a whole bunch of different things for VCs and for innovators and people trying to grow their company or go public. But those kinds of firms that are focused, I think, are going to do well. Um, but that doesn't mean a big firm cannot, you know, have the same kind of focus. I mean, Oric has a focus on 4 or 5 practice areas, which I think is great, but they're also involved in innovation. So I think with any kind of company, but especially law firms these days, they really have to have a clear idea of who they are and what it is that they want to be doing and what they want to be known for.
Woo! Well, so that kind of leads into this last question. I mean, if you were going to give the JD on the street, a lawyer who's decided to hang her shingle up, you know, what's the one piece of advice that, you know, they could start doing now to improve their marketing or business development of their firm? Is it that decide what you want to be when you grow up? I mean, what do you think that one piece of advice is?
I think that is. I mean, granted, it can shift, you know, but I think having an
Right.
idea of where you want to go, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to know if you're going to go in-house or if you're going to stay at a firm, but knowing what interests you and exposing yourself to different kinds of things, maybe through the bar or by going to different CLE programs, whether that's at PLI or at your firm, or at the bar association. I think, you know, exposing yourself to lots of different areas of the law to figure out what interests you and where your passion is. And then as far as having a plan, yes, in a perfect world, I mean, there are law firms where they'll use coaches for associates and for partners to really have them focus in on a plan. But if you don't have that, still, I'm a big believer in taking an old fashioned piece of paper and a pen and writing down, you know, what it is that you want to get to, what your goal is, and then what are the steps that you're going to take to get you there. Is it knowing the right people? Is it gaining the right knowledge? Is it getting the right clients? But really having a goal and putting it in writing, because there is a psychological connection between what you write down and what kind of gets imprinted on your brain. And I think a 3-point plan is a great place to start.
So easy. Yeah, it's just, I mean, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to read all this lady's books. You don't have to go to all the seminars. You just have to actually look inside. And I think a lot of people pursued maybe a possible path in the legal profession because they thought it was just a fixed idea. And now we're starting to realize you have to build your brand. You have to be yourself. You have to start kind of walking that line. But you've given some amazing tips just right here, really easy. If people want to learn more about you, read your books, find you, have you come and do a seminar, how can they find more about you, Deborah?
Well, I have a website, which is deborahfarone.com. I figured I would keep that easy so that I would remember it. But I am also on Twitter, and I'm on Instagram. And I do tweet out hints and pieces from the book on occasion. And, I've written and I write a regular column for Forbes. So there are a bunch of ways, and I think that, look, I only have one book. I'd like everyone to think I have lots of books, and I'm a well-known published author. I just have one. But it's based on 28 years of experience being in-house and seeing how things work and don't work. And I don't think anyone needs to spend money, quite frankly, on buying a book or going to a program. But I think, again, putting something down in writing for themselves, whether it's something that's going to change in a year or 6 months, that's okay too. But I think sometimes just taking steps, even if they're imperfect steps, is better than staying still. So I encourage people to do that.
Yeah, I have one thing to say about this. I'm gonna do some promotion for you here because I think this is a very important point. The chapters of your book are a lot different. This is practical advice. So to all our listeners, when Deborah's saying this is 20 years of experience, this isn't like how to make it rain and looking into the mirror and taking a solid talking
Right.
nice to yourself. The chapters of this book are building a marketing department and hiring the right CMO, technology and marketing, traditional and social media. I mean, this is real stuff that is backed up by real experience. So Deborah, it may be your first book, but it's incredibly comprehensive. And so, everybody go get it now.
Thank you. And people can order it online through PLI. I think the URL is pli.edu/best practices, or it's also available on Amazon.
5 questions we ask everyone.
Number 1, what was the last book you read?
Oh, the Michelle Obama book. I loved it. I think everyone should read it.
Yeah. All right. Number 2, what's your favorite place?
My favorite place, New York City. I just feel like it's a place where I can both find myself relaxing through a crazy walk through Times Square or being revved up by being in a park. It's just that kind of place where there's always something going on and it fits every mood.
Excellent.
Jake, you have anything to contribute to that one?
No, yeah. 8 years in the city. I know exactly what she's talking about.
He's down. Okay. Number 3, what sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
Oh, I look at CNN and I look at Wall Street Journal. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to the Masters of Scale, I think, is wonderful. I listen to Lawsome because I think you guys are great. I occasionally listen to Michael Barberi at the Times, and I like Gretchen Rubin, which I know is kind of a little bit more of the soft skill stuff, but I find she's very interesting.
Yeah. All right. Number 4. It's probably the hardest question in the whole list. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
Ketchup.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
Front runners in this list are ketchup, mustard by a long shot,
And then wine.
Yeah,
And
I was
then,
going to say wine, beer, or
liquor.
rum.
Everybody's talking about liquor.
Throw in as a
I don't
condiment.
think that's a condiment, but I hear
I
where
don't
you're.
know if it fulfills the condiment requirement.
I don't think it does. You don't see that at 7-Eleven. Like, I just want some Jack Daniels.
And I don't usually put it on a hamburger, but
Right? Like little mayo, little scotch. I don't know. All right. At the end here, number 5. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
by taking a long walk. I just find taking walks, especially in the city, is an incredible adventure. You always see something unexpected or run into someone you know, or just have a new experience. So I love taking long walks in the city.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsomepodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawsome.